Do I have free will, man?
Yes, just depends on your identification of I.
Touche. Yep. Done. All right. Got it. My ego does not have free will. It feels like the ego can choose whether or not how much it wants to resist its submitting to the higher I.
Right.
And the higher I, yeah, it just feels.
Higher I is just like a strong wind, and it's like way easier to listen to it. And eventually it can go fucking hurricane style
Sure.
and slam a fucking tractor into you until you listen, but like usually it's a wind and you can listen at the wind level, or you can listen at the tornado or the Cat 5 hurricane level,
or the truck on the road level.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Like whatever, it's going to blow in a direction. And it's your opportunity to dance, to furl or unfurl the sail as you choose, to resist or row against it or whatever you want to do. But yeah, surrendering to your divine will. That is, and your true self will.
And I feel like that's been the lesson that I've been called to face since I started working here. Is like before this, I thought it was the ego. I thought it was my choice. I thought it was, do the things that I want to do. And since I've gotten here, it's like whatever the energetic flow is, it's so obvious that like I have to be playing a game with myself now to even identify with the idea that like I'm choosing this.
Mm-hmm.
The ego is choosing this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I just kind of have to submit. But then in the submitting comes the grace that makes the higher I's will come easier and quicker with more fun.
Yep. And then people get it twisted because they think in the submission there's a kind of sloth. There's like a laziness. No, there's not. Man. Like when you know what you need to do, that may mean that you're actually working harder than you've ever worked, working more, but you know why you're doing it. So you're propelled by this kind of inner energy source without the resistance to it, without the doubt, without the mental machinations that fucking chew us up like some big league chew, like constantly like, and without that, then we have a lot more energy to actually put forward to what we're doing.
And I smoked some weed last night, and then I got to thinking about the quote that you talked about where it was, the truth will set you free, but not until it's finished with you.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of this image that I saw. So I've had experience on psychedelics where I feel like I come up against this truth, capital T truth, that my ego is, I'm still not at a point yet where I accept it. And it's almost like I come up to a point and then I can't go beyond because I'm afraid. And then I have to come back down into my body and this life and this ego. And it feels like the whole point of the game is to bring this vessel to a point where it's able to accept the capital T truth that feels like it's going to be at the end of my life. And it feels like once I accept it, it's going to destroy this thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Paul Selig's teaching in his latest book, Beyond the Known Realization, is about. Like, realization isn't gentle because it's surrendering the identity structure that the ego has built and clings to and defends as if it's fucking life or death, as if it's real. And when I asked him on the first podcast, asked him, is the ego itself an entity of its own accord? Is it an entity? And the guides were like, yeah, you could think of it that way. So it's actually like, you have to think of the ego not just as this part of yourself, but almost a part of yourself that is so defined and in such defiance of the unicity of all things that it forms the energy of an entity itself. And that entity has the same fucking primary drive of all entities, which is to survive. And so a surrender of that entity, because ultimately it isn't built upon any structure other than the separation and the denial of what it really is. So like to let that go is a death. That's why they call it ego death. But you're the ego when you identify as the ego. And it's fucking gets really challenging and painful.
And the thing that comes up, like, I can't shake this construct of how I look at what the ego is, but it feels like whatever consciousness is, it's experiencing through the lens of the human meat suit. And it's like the avatar of the human meat suit is the ego. And so with the rising and the falling of the energy that goes through the hardware of the meat suit, it can change how the ego feels. But that capital T truth at the end of time is like, the meat suit's going to be gone. The ego is going to vanish with it. But it feels like there's a thing waiting at the edge of time that is going to destroy me if I'm able to accept it. But like, there's this really interesting idea in the Bardos, which is kind of a mystical book in the East, and it's this idea that when you die, you will confront this thing, and if you have any attachments, you fail that test. And then there's this in-between space where you get an opportunity again. You've already died. You've had the first encounter. You've failed if you've had any attachment to wanting to come back to this life. And then there's this like in-between period in the spirit realm. This is what this book says. And then you get to confront the thing again. And if you fail again, you get reincarnated. And so the idea in the East is that anyone who is still here is people who have met the thing at some point and weren't able to pass through that gate.
Sounds very like, to me, from what I understand, and just talking to Selig's guides and things like that, and reading his work, sounds a little bit like in the gamification, anthropomorphization of what we typically do about passing or failing a test and punishments and rewards.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more choice than I think we realize. I think there is that divine will of ourselves, our spirit's choice to come back and learn and experience.
Yeah.
You know, like when he talks about the guides, like what did the guides miss? Because the guides have, you know, in his teachings again, and if you're skeptical of Selig's work, like all respect to you,
Sure.
like, you know, I tend to, you know, give it a lot of veracity, resonates with me. When he talks about the guides who have formerly taken lives, you know, talks about what they miss. They miss the rain on their skin. They miss the touch of a lover's lips. Yeah. They miss the way that, you know, coffee smells in the morning. You know, they miss Absolutely. Like whatever. They miss these things. They miss the sunlight, you know, tickling their body. They miss these things. And I think there's also things that they have to learn and lessons that they have. And they may have transcended the lessons, but I think there's also that choice like, you know what? I miss the shit. I miss the struggle. I miss the challenge. Game. I miss the game. I miss the pleasure. I miss the pain. I miss the gamut of experience that's available. So let's go. You know, and I think the more you have to learn, I think the more that your spirit wants to evolve and wants to grow and wants to learn these things. So the more eager it is to incarnate. But I just feel like there's a lot more choice involved than this. I think people feel like we're in like a rock tumbler, you know, and it's like, when am I going to get spit out? When is my bingo ball going to get spit out into the reincarnation game? And am I going to be a fucking turtle this time? Like it's some random shit. I don't think it's that. I think it's a game of evolution. You're evolving the coagulation of your consciousness, imagining them as particles of light or vibrations of sound, like this magnitude. You're gathering that with education and the colors and the frequencies and everything that you're gathering, the lessons you have to learn, goal being to try and expand yourself, you know, to the biggest, brightest form that you can and most robust form that you can. And you have to fit inside an organism that can hold that thing at least at least tenuously. So it's not like we could come back and reincarnate as a fucking butterfly. Right. Because how are we going to fit all this light that we've accumulated, all these lessons?
Mass of energy has to go into higher and higher, like complex containers.
Exactly. It has to fit.
This begs the question, when we make AI, like will the next round of entity things that choose to come, will they inhabit, or are we just getting way too down the what if rabbit hole? You know, because the AI would be a container of such complexity beyond, at least we're making a lot of assumptions about like
what AI is
and what we are. Like, I think that our idea of what we are is really simplified, and we don't quite see the magic of what this container is, and that we're thinking that
I think that's the fallacy. I think that, and that's what, you know, when Duncan Trussell asked Paul Selig on his first, I don't know how many podcasts they've done, but he asked him on the podcast, The Bell House, which was the first one I heard about AI. The guides were basically saying like, you're underestimating what it is to be a human. You think
I resonate with that so much.
You think that you're a computational being, you know, but you're not. Yeah. You're so much more than that. Like the divine spark, the mudra of creation, your soul, distinct from your spirit, your soul, which is your piece of the unicity, is unique and is not irreplicable by a machine. You know, so like as advanced as we think the computational powers might be, which will far exceed our own computational powers, actually computers are better at computing, you know, for the most part than us anyways. I don't know if they're beating the best chess master yet, but they for sure fucking will.
I'm pretty sure that they are, and they even beat the best Go master, which is a much more complex game. And so they're, And
They
there's
win
a
at
reason
Clue
why we call
all
it
the time.
computing. Yeah.
Yeah, like so they're already winning and they're going to keep winning, but that's not who we are. Like that's not the spark. And I think this idea that we can create the spark, I think is a denial of what that thing is, what that piece of, the piece of the all of source, of the mudra, of all of that we contain, and how fucking magical that thing is.
And someone mentioned this the other day, and it totally kind of rechanged the way I thought about AI. And it's that humans in their psyche tend to have we might not realize, but we have a dialectical experience happening inside of us where there's something inside of us that is not the conscious mind, that most specifically through dreams, but there are other ways it conversates with the ego. Like it can show you things in dreams you don't know you know. And so like how? So there's something happening in the psyche that's not computational, where a computer can only be given the instructions. It can't really have a dialogue with a second entity where that entity teaches it. Like a human has to tell it what rails to go down.
Yeah. Conscious versus unconscious mind. Like try to program that. Like doesn't even fucking make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you could program some of the facial behavior of holding a secret because of the social cues or whatever, but it's not the conscious and the unconscious or subconscious, or there's so much interplay between like conscious mind, subconscious mind, unconscious, spirit, and then soul, and then all of these parts. I mean, this is what I'm looking to write this next book about, is like helping people navigate like what the fuck is the human mind, and how do we wrangle this thing, and how does it interplay and dance with the spirit and with the soul, and how does all the tools that we have available, from meditation to flotation to psychedelics to all of these practices, and then also software programs like Stoicism and different things, how do we reframe so that we can get a handle on this thing and really start to enjoy this fucking life?
I feel like that's my life's work. Like I'm going to try to work on that my entire life. It feels like it's one of those things that the more I study, the more it's just like I have to bow before the awe of the task itself. Like, is the human mind capable enough of understanding the human mind? Or is the conscious mind capable of understanding the psyche? Like, is the piece capable of understanding the whole? And probably not, but we could probably give people a better map than what most of people are working with now.
I mean, I think we have to reduce it to the minimum effective approximation.
Exactly.
Which is basically what you do with the body as well. Like, do you understand the complex metabolism of an avocado? Like, some people do, but like most people
took
don't.
Like 10 years. Yeah.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
You just need to know, like, okay, avocado, good.
Like exactly.
Good.
Yeah.
And
good point.
Yields health, healthy fats that my system can utilize, metabolize, and slower than, you can start learning some attributes about it. And I think that's what most of us are going to get to. But I think there will be a convergence where we'll start to know most of the knowable things. But I think the trickier and more interesting part is when you start to explore like awareness, consciousness, spirit itself, and start to understand that, because that inherently is occupying a different dimensional metaphysical reality than the reality that your, stenographers and fucking whoever else, cartographers and everybody else is who's trying to map this shit out. It's not in that reality, like it's not in the reality that has words and pencils and shit like that. So it's going to be an approximation anyways.
That's the gift of like any experience that helps you as the individual. Just take that step back where your life and the language and the structures, that's the map. And that once you start to connect with like awareness or experience or spirit, you're now seeing the forest. Like, most people experience the world through maps, like maps of the forest, as opposed to actually going into the forest. And I think that going into the forest is like you living your life, you experiencing your feelings, you witnessing the maps you are creating almost unconsciously to try to help you either avoid punishment or find pleasure. And it's life-changing.
Yep. Speaking of life-changing, let's talk about Go For Your Win.
Maps, yeah.
Because this
is
was
the best map it changed my life, man.
that's, an amazing testimonial to hear for me for this, because this was the first major work that I endeavored to do. I put myself in isolation. I was on a plant dieta in British Columbia, and I'd been working on it before, but I literally just meditated and wrote this thing for like 12 hours a day for like 3 weeks straight, and got the majority of it done through then, and then kind of worked on it, ended up at 40,000 words. I was so proud. I thought it was going to be a book, and I showed it to Ryan Holiday, and I was like, look at this. This is going to be my first book. And he's like, yeah, no, it's too broad. It covers too many topics. It's too expansive. Like, maybe this is 3 books, but it's not 1. And I was like, well, fuck. I don't want to.
I did too much.
I don't want to turn this into 3 books.
Yeah.
And I really understand that now that I wrote Own the Day, and I understand how much you have to put into each concept.
Because Own the Day is just a slice of what this would have been.
Right. Exactly. Like, so now I realize, like, oh yeah, this is way too broad. So the only way that actually it could make sense was to do it in an online course where it had some guidance, had some practices, had some exercises, and was able to be a map that people could digest. Not like a book, but digest with dialogue and community involved. So that's why we made it a course.
And the story of how I found this course is a story that if my 19-year-old self heard, he'd be like, fuck you, dude. And I got fired from a job that I hated. I was a call center manager, and I basically learned how to do my job better by doing less. And then my boss found out and basically fired me, but didn't like. So the day I got fired, I saw the ad for this, and it was the day before it launched. And I'd never bought an online course, and I bought this fucking course. And over the next year, I worked on it, and in tandem with reading Mastery by Robert Greene, that book and this course provided a map for me about I still have a huge ego, but I had a big ego as a kid where I thought I could do it on my own. And I didn't even understand the idea of apprenticeship or to be a student. And Go For Your Win in tandem with Mastery, gave me the right mindset and the map for me to, start to create my dream life.
Yeah. And that's dope, because the purpose was, all right, I was really kind of writing this for my younger self, for
sure.
one. Like, what would fucking 25-year-old Chris Marcus need to fucking read? And that used to be my name. I changed my name when I was 30. Mm-hmm. I was actually born Michael Aubrey Christopher Marcus, which was a full pain in the ass because everybody called me Chris, but I would check into a hotel. My name was Michael. 4 first names. Dude. I know, right? I was like, this is so annoying. And then I did ayahuasca, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to change my name so I could change it to Chris. I needed to change my name. I could change it to Chris, or I could just fucking totally flip the script and start a new point of demarcation where everything from this point forward is different. And it felt like everything was different after that first round of ayahuasca. And so I went with Aubrey, which is my grandfather's name. And I'm fucking super glad I did, because I certainly don't feel like Chris. But anyways, I was Chris then.
For sure.
That's who I was. And
Christian.
That dude.
Sorry, that was bad.
Topher. Topher. I could have gone by Topher.
No, you couldn't have.
I could have. But anyways, Chris Marcus really, was just searching and stressing and trying to figure shit out, and had no structure, would get little morsels from different people and different things and different books and different ideas. But the overwhelming thing was I needed just something I could hold on to, something that provided a map, an escalation of okay, focus on these things, and these things, and run that circle until I could continue to evolve to the point where I got to, because I was fumbling around largely blind in the dark. And this was, so this was for Chris Marcus. And then everybody else who's in their Chris Marcus phase,
because that's an archetype, the Chris Marcus, the 25,
just
lost,
partying a little too much, kind of doing okay. I had some successes, and I was able to sell fake vaginas, which I'm pretty sure everybody in the whole world can sell a fake vagina. It's not hard to do. It's like selling fleshlights. It was the easiest job in the world. But working in a fucking gold mining company, and I did everything, man. Nutraceuticals, gold mines, oil and gas, biotech, fucking fleshlights, fucking realty. I worked for like a realty thing for a while. Like, yeah, like all of these things, everything was like kind of failing and kind of not working. And I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? But instead of really asking, what am I doing? I really needed to be asking, like, why am I doing it before I figure out, like, what am I doing? And that's really how this course starts. It's like your why, your mission. Like, what's your purpose? And I didn't fucking know. I just wanted to be successful. I wanted to be successful to show my dad that I'm, see, Dad, I didn't need to go to Goldman Sachs because I'm making it on my own. And see, inner Chris Marcus, like I am cool and I am strong and I am successful and I am gonna, so I was doing it for all these egoic whys instead of like a real why, a real mission, like a real purpose. So that's where the course started, because that was the thing that I was fucking missing the most.
Yeah, and I didn't have mine before I took the course. And like whenever I get stressed out, I just write down what my mission is. And it brings so much clarity. It puts shit into perspective, and it really gives me a sense of this goal, even if I don't achieve it, pursuing it is worth all the pain, all the suffering, all the obstacles, all the lessons. And it's the ultimate tuner,
Yeah, it sets the framework. It sets the framework for everything else that you can see through. It's funny, like when I feel lost even now, like when I'm stressed out even now, it's because I'm losing sight of my mission, which I actually just reconsolidated, interestingly, and I shared that with you.
Yeah.
I lose sight of that mission, and then I'm sidetracked, and then I'm kind of lost, and then I'm stressed, and then I'm worried about it. But when you have like a very clear mission, and then you know really what to do.
Yeah.
Because you know what the mission demands. And for me, just to share with everybody, my mission, which used to be very loose, which I think is a good place to start, and because it's fine to adopt as well, or make your mission whatever you want. But mine was, after being with Don Howard, was para el bien de todos, for the good of all, which is an expression of serving. And to me, serving always meant doing. So it meant like, what was I going to put out? What podcast was I going to make? What books was I going to write? What blog posts was I going to do? What speeches was I going to give? What money was I going to donate? It was all about my doing.
Right.
And then since interacting with Paul Selig and also the deep introspective work, I realized probably the most important thing for me to do is to be who I am capable of being.
Right.
And his final affirmation in his latest book that's still unreleased is, I have come as love, I am love. To be that force of embodied consciousness that is just radiating that love and excitement and joy for life. And that itself opens up the possibility for other people to be that, which is what I wanted to do anyways with all the podcasts and the books and everything. But like by being that, not only will I be able to create better works, but I'll also be able to show that, hey, you can do this too. I'm not fucking special. There's nothing about me. I wasn't born this way. I didn't was born with rainbows coming out of my ass every time I farted. Like, you can be this. This is a part of every single human, so this is possible for you.
Yeah.
And like, that is the thing. But still, when I get lost now, it's because I'm focused on what I'm doing.
Right.
Rather than like, okay, how am I being now? Am I advancing my being of who I am?
Yeah.
Or am I just so stressed about what I'm doing? Well, usually I'm stressed about what I'm doing. But that's the point of this whole story is that it's losing track of that mission. First, number one is to be. Number two is to serve. Number three is to enjoy. And they all work together. Because if I'm being and I'm serving, I'm enjoying. And if I'm serving, then I'm being. And everything is fucking interlaced and interlinked and codependent.
The thing that I like about this is because I'm 10 years behind chronologically, it shows what can happen to your mission. And I feel like, because my mission is a very concrete, I want to create the most empirically effective online courses for treating depression and anxiety. A part of me knows that I'm going to get to a part in my life where I'm going to shed that goal, and it's going to be about me being. But I feel like if you're young, it's good to pick a specific thing and then start to move towards it. And it's almost like the goal hones your being till you get to the point where you don't need the goal to be the type of thing that will achieve that type of goal.
Or you need to actually achieve the goal to realize the goal was never the thing in the first place anyways.
I'll talk to you when I'm 40.
Like that's the thing. Like you have to at least get enough traction in those kind of tangible material elements of your goals to realize like, okay, I did this and I can do this, but it didn't yield that ultimate satisfaction, that ultimate happiness that I want to feel for my life, the ultimate sense of deep fulfillment, And I think for me, like, look, I fucking created on it. I wrote a New York Times bestseller. I got this podcast. I got all of these things, but what am I going to do? Just keep chasing more things? Like I can fucking see the diminishing return on the chasing of things. I enjoy the things, but they don't bring me any particular like, yay. Like I don't like go rub my fucking, accolades every day and just let them fill me with warmth. Like I don't think about it that way. It doesn't work. So I can either tilt myself towards more things, which will equally I'll be happy that I did them, but it won't give me the satisfaction. Or I could go for the big goal, which is to be in a state where I'm in presence, in consciousness, in awareness, in love, and then trust that all the things that flow from that state will be even better, and I'll enjoy them more, and I'll enjoy the ups and the downs, and all will work in its own accord. But I don't think I would have been able to discard any of my emphasis, because I'm still having a hard time discarding my emphasis on the doing. I'm still, last night, like I'm not talking like, oh yeah, like a few years ago, like now, I'm still having trouble discarding the doing in favor of the being, but I'm making progress. And when I remind myself of the being, like I'm so much happier today. You saw me yesterday.
For sure.
I'm way happier today. Why am I way happier today? Because somewhere around 9 p.m. last night, when I was taking a shit and thinking about things, I really realized like, well, what if I just focused on being now instead of worrying about all the things that I need to do? I was like, oh yeah, that feels good. That feels good. Focus on being. And then I was like happier,
Absolutely.
like then because everything felt right. And it was about reorienting myself to my mission. But like you said, that mission wouldn't have been the right mission. I wouldn't have understood it. I wouldn't have been able to, wasn't the right mission for my earlier self's
for that
time, for that period of time. And I think what the course is designed to do is to help get you through whatever mission you are. It leaves space for a grander mission like this where I want to be, but also smaller intentions and goals. And because it goes from mission to vocation to profession, to connections to vibration, like all of the different elements that can help you achieve these things in the physical and the material and the advice and the quotes and the understandings and the practices that can help you whatever your orientation towards accomplishment is.
Two images came up when you were describing that resonate. And the first one is like having your goals is like you see a tree in the Garden of Eden and it's got fruit and you want to go eat the fruit and you're really focused on eating the fruit. And you start to eat the fruit and you realized, oh, Eve is at the trunk of the tree and I can dance and just be, as opposed to trying to go up and grab the fruit over and over and over again. It's like you have to eat the fruit to realize that that's not why you were put here.
Right.
And then the other thing is it's like the map or the goal is the thing that becomes the cocoon, So like the caterpillar is all the, well, I could do this, I could be that, but you're sitting on the couch smoking weed, talking about it. But like actually going for your win is the cocoon that will eventually show you that you can just be. I was going to try to pun with butterfly, but you can just be. You can just become a being.
And that's really like, so it's interesting, last night, again, I mean, so many things always happen so fast. But last night anyways, Whitney is in the part of her career. She's in the start of on it part of her career. Like her career as a love and relationship coach is coming together. She's meeting Dr. Wednesday Martin coming up. When this podcast released, this will have already happened. But she's meeting Wednesday Martin, putting on some events, and like really it's going so well. Like the people she's working with are just so thrilled, and her body of knowledge from being in the crucible of this incredible challenge for 5 years, and her personal understanding of these situations that isn't theoretical, that
so
isn't
much deeper
than
wisdom, or than reading.
Yeah, exactly. This is like somatic knowledge that she's able to express to people and be like, oh yeah, jealousy? Yeah, let me talk to you about that. Like I know
got
about
stories,
that thing.
bro. Yeah.
This isn't, I'm not going to be quoting Freud for it here, but I'll fucking quote, 2017
Whitney,
month of September, my own life. Do you want me to get my diary?
That's so funny.
So, but she's in this spot where she's in this place where everything is starting to pick up momentum. And I see this like anxiety and worry. And it just reminds me of me when I was starting on it, which was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Is this actually happening? Like I'm actually in my career. Holy shit. How's it going to break? What's going to happen? It's all going to fail. I'm not good enough. And I watch her doing that. And I was like, listen, like the only advice I would give myself, the only thing I would change is like, smile more, trust more. It's all going to be all right. Because I wasn't there in the process. I wasn't enjoying the process. I was so goal focused and so fear of the thing that I wanted my whole life that was happening. I was so afraid that I was going to get fucking swiped out, sweep the leg, Johnny, underneath me, and I was going to fall on my back. Like I was so worried about that I wasn't like really enjoying it. And I think, so that's another thing that I think is permeated through this course, that your win is the going for the win. So remember, like whatever stage you're in, like remember to enjoy that shit too. Like Whitney, like enjoy this shit now, even though it's a little bit more than you think you can handle. And it's, I can't believe this is happening. Is this real? All those thoughts, like, but still take your time to smile and like trust. And that's, that's something that I was also trying to tell my younger self, and I still am telling my current self, smile more, trust more.
It's beautiful to see in a lot of people's lives that are really focused on trying to be better, that they become the human that they needed when they started trying to become something, So like, I noticed that I write for my 18-year-old self. Like I write for that scared, compensating, egotistical dude who's afraid of the divine, who just wants to see life through science. And it's honed my voice. And like, go for your win was what you needed, 10 years prior. Yep.
And then, all right, so understand like where you're going, how to get there, how to form the connections, how to hold a vibration that attracts people rather than repels people, how to differentiate between your professions and your vocations, and how you're going to make money and what your passions are, and how all that works. Okay, that was the first morsel. And that's why when I presented it to Ryan Holiday, I was like, okay, that could be a book. But I didn't stop there. I was like, well, I also need to train skills. Like there's so many skills that I needed. And these skills: harness belief, practice stillness, wield choice, cultivate toughness, assimilate experience. Like those were all the things that I needed to like practice. Like practice makes the master. I needed to learn how to use belief and weaponize it. Like learn how to use and wield choice. I talked about it some in Own the Day, that ability, that superpower we have to mentally override that thing that we use to get in the cold water because we know it's good for us. The thing that we use to choose the healthy meal when we know we're going to feel better when we eat it, like all of these things that we need to start practicing now so that we have these skills and have these fucking masteries inside us so that we can utilize them when we're actually going towards our purpose.
It's like the beginning is like the first section is you putting the coordinates in the GPS. Mm-hmm. The second section is all about how you actually move the vehicle there.
Yep.
And dude, I use this stuff every day. And like, it sounds like a cliche, but I use this stuff every day. Like I meditate every day. I try to do yoga unless my back starts to act up on me and then I got to go to the PT. But now we have a PT head on it, so that's beautiful. Yep. But picking what you're going to try to do is the most important piece, but then you have to go do the doing.
Yep.
And I use this stuff every fucking day.
As we all should. Like this is not something that it's like you learn it, you got it, and this is fractally deep.
Yeah.
Practicing stillness, that's fucking fractally deep.
Rest of my life.
Like that's what are the monks doing the whole time? They're practicing stillness where presence and connection to your knowing actually happens. But they're doing it for their whole lives, still practicing. What have you been doing for the last 30 years? I don't know, practicing stillness. Like it's not like it's something like, got it, stillness. Cool, bro. It's not like you're playing Operation and your hand isn't fucking vibrating. Talking like full holistic, the totality of stillness, and like, what are the tools that can help you get there and help you like cultivate that?
What's been your personal favorite stillness practice? Because you don't seem to get still. You seem to be very being.
I get temporarily incredibly still right now. And the interesting thing is, like, when I read Tom Brown's Awakening Spirits, and that's a lot of his wisdom is permeated through that book.
Yeah.
Like, he talks about stillness as a choice. So it's almost this mental override power to just get still. Doesn't mean I choose it all that often. But like, I've learned enough, cultivated through psychedelics, through meditation, through sensory deprivation, through meditation, through, all of the different tools. I've learned what that feels like. And I've learned that I can get there when I really trust and am really willing to do it. And that's, I think how I use it. Now, I could certainly use it better. Like, I could do it more, and that would be only a benefit. But like, at any point in time, I can get still enough to ask my knowing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what's my knowing? And I can even do that now in the heaviest emotional turbulence, which is rad and something I've had to train as well, because I've had a lot of emotional turbulence over the last year. But training to get still enough to go to my knowing, and then it's become kind of a choice to a certain degree. Now, there's certain tools that I use. There's a meditation by this guy named Muji. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite guided meditation for now. I can't listen to myself do a guided meditation, even though I like mine, and I like the Sacred Silence meditation. Very visualization heavy, very movement heavy. But Muji's, that's on, we'll put this in the show notes. Muji's meditation, it's on Spotify. It's fucking so dope. Like, drops me in so deep into stillness. We're playing. We got a sample going from Ryan Giles. Ryan Giles couldn't wait. He couldn't wait. He's like, I want it now. I want that fucking stillness now.
So I'm in the room. I was making eye contact with you when you said that, and I know my experience. I felt a thing that my 18-year-old self would be like, you're making that shit up. So I'm personally interested in what steps you would give someone who wants to be able to access that type of stillness on command in the middle of a podcast right after a question. Because that was an event for me.
Yeah, it was real. And it's a funny thing that it's real. It's why when I give a lot of my speeches, I'll have people take 6 deep breaths, because that actually, there's a tangible shift. Now, this is proven in that Japanese study that I quote all the time, and it's in the book, that 6 deep breaths. Well, what did they measure? They measured blood pressure. They measured, your brain waves. They measured there's certain quantifications that you can make, but there's an intangible quantification, right? Like we were talking about at the very start of this conversation. There's some intangibility that's something that an AI wouldn't be able to feel. My hypothesis. Now, I don't want to put caps on what AI could feel, but there's that thing that can come through and perfuse through all the cells and actually create an energetic understanding that I think is the specialness of humanity, like something that we're able to project to one another that isn't quantifiable by machines at this point, except, we can measure brain waves, we can measure certain elements of what's happening to the body when it's there. And I think you just have to touch it enough times. And that's why I listed so many ways to touch it.
Yeah.
And then once you know that you're there, you can get the shortcuts to it. But sometimes the first time you touch it has to be a long process. And for me, that was certainly the case. But the more times you touch it, the easier it is to build shortcuts back to that place where you can access it.
And what's like kind of blowing my mind as I'm witnessing this is because I can see the younger part of me instantly start to try to weave stories about how what I experienced wasn't valid, but like I'm getting to a point in the last couple of years where I'm really starting to connect to the fact that the most fundamental piece of evidence you as an individual will ever have access to is your experience. And then you can use language to, put your feet back on the ground after an experience, because some experiences will fucking blast you off into the atmosphere. But it's interesting to see that I'm still witnessing that in my mind during the podcast, that the moment after it happened, I started a piece of my ego started to create stories like, nah.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I think that's something you learn too. Like, I've had a lot of experiences with DMT, a lot of experiences. And at first, the experiences that you always want to talk about, oh, I saw this and I saw this and the colors were this and the place was this. But the magic for me is when all of that fades and then all of that is done and there's just that deep stillness that comes. And like, you can think about that with yoga too. Like, the real treasure, the pearl of yoga is Shavasana.
Completely agree.
Like, it's that moment where your whole body is just awareness, and you're in awareness. And that's why they tell you, okay, wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. I'm always like, nah, not yet.
Not yet.
And they're like, turn over on your side. I'm like, nope. Nope. I'm gonna sit in this
for 55 minutes to get here.
Yeah.
Give me 10 minutes.
I'm gonna sit there for a little bit longer. I've been sweating for this thing. I've been pushing against my resistance. I've been using my breath and the movement and the release and the surrender and the acceptance and all of this to get to this moment where I can be still. Oh God, that feels good. And that's the same with like a DMT experience. Yes, sometimes there's incredible value and incredible lessons and insight, and feels like little doctors are working on my brain and moving my jaw around and fixing things. And I've had incredible things that have happened, but really, ultimately, it's the stillness that comes on the backside of that is the most valuable and precious part of it. And I think that's what we try to touch, and that's what we try to access, and then. The path is to just get better and better at that. But that's what the second part of this thing is. It's not only stillness, but it's how to use belief that that you can get there, that you can build shortcuts, that you can do it. And then the choice, and then toughness too, like toughness and courage and these elements where it's like, oh, I can withstand this. Like I can walk into this cold water. And I don't need to flinch, and I don't need to make a big deal about it. Even for me, like thinking about this past year for me, I launched Own the Day. I'm talking about cold plunge. For the most part of this past year, if I was going to do that, I have that chest freezer. It's at like 38 degrees, 40 degrees, something's fucking frigid. I needed like witnesses to like witness me be courageous and like hold me accountable and that was the level of toughness that I had at that point, the level of choice that I had mastered at that point where, I could do it, but I needed like, hurrah, I needed like some help.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, the more I practice, it's just I can quietly slip out the door, quietly slip into the water, and quietly, go underneath and quietly emerge a better person without making a fuss.
Yeah.
And that's cultivating toughness, that kind of toughness to be able to withstand without resistance. And those are all skills that you got to use in every situation. Use them in, cash flow crisis in your business or personal, emotional difficulty or all of these challenges. You got to be tough.
And there's a wisdom to cultivating toughness that is interesting that I've seen play out in my life more and that was identified in the story that you just told. And it's like, some people will pay lip service to wanting to cultivate toughness, and then they begin in such a way that injures them or keeps them from having to actually cultivate the toughness. But like, I know that when I commit to something and I'm doing it from a place of like knowing and not from a place of ego, I instinctually understand that a part of me is a fucking child and that I have to bring it forward towards the toughness to actually bring it out in him. But like, if I'm doing something out of ego, I'll go in the gym and do something I shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. And then I don't have to cultivate that toughness for 3 weeks, Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, when you're trying to say like, see how tough I am, world.
Right.
Like, let me show you, there's like almost like an anger and an insecurity that's driving it, which is ultimately faulty
100%.
And judgmental and like, but real toughness like asks for none of that. It asks for you don't need a fucking round of applause when you're done from yourself or from anybody. You're not proving anything to anybody. You just are. It is part of your being. It is just knowing that this is something that you can withstand and withstand with a fucking smile, and that's, I think That's the reality of it. It's the difference between that first person taking that first fight. It's like, I'm going to be, if I was in that position, I was training for a fight. We were talking about this before that we started rolling. Like, I was training for a fight before I got in a street fight. Why? Because I wanted to show the world that I was tough.
Yeah.
Show the world that I could, or show myself that I could, really.
Right.
Because showing the world is like another way to show your own superego, that judgmental part of yourself.
Look at me.
Look at me. Look at me. I am. See, I'll step in the ring. See, I'm not afraid. See everybody. Basically see self. See self, I'm tough. But then you meet someone like Tim Kennedy, walking around in his Ranger booty shorts, and just a big old smile and big old hug. He fucking knows he's tough. He doesn't. It's not like look at me, look how tough I am, everybody.
Right.
And that's the same with every really high level champion fighter that I've ever seen. Like, they're the last person that's going to start some shit to prove they're tough or like have to prove anything because they know it, and that's been their path of knowing. But there's many, many paths. Like that path pays a heavy cost. It pays a cost in traumatic brain injury, pays a cost in wear and tear on your body. But it is one way to learn, and blessed that way to learn, for sure. But there's other ways, and I think the course is just talking about it in generality, knowing that there's countless ways up the mountain.
Absolutely, and that no matter where your mountain is pointed, one of the essential skills, that's why it's called essential skills, is toughness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Jordan Peterson brought up this like an interesting perspective that when you're in your early 20s, you should purposefully go too hard to see where your limit is and then calibrate back from there for the rest of your life. And I feel like that's something that I've tried to embrace since I started working here, is like, how much is too much? And I don't think I found it yet. And I'm still kind of trying to push to see like how much stuff is too much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I get to 110% and things start to get wobbly and weird, then like I kind of know how hard I can work. And I think that that's one of the gifts that college gave me, is that it was the first time in my life that I dealt with adversity. Like, I didn't live with my family anymore. My parents had it gone, so they weren't able to give me any type of advice. And I had to try for the first time, And we were talking about this before, but like some of the best moments of my life have been when I went from carefree to the next second, a life-threatening situation. And then a thing came online inside of me that showed me I'm so much more capable than my ego, which is playing this weird game of being small.
Yeah.
Plays.
Yep. Yeah, man. These are the skills. And then you're practicing these skills, utilizing and in response to some of the resistance that exists. And that's part 3 of this
Capital
book.
R.
So like module 2, which is training the essential skills, again, could have been another book, but we put it in this course. And then part 3 is then overcoming resistance, but not overcoming it as looking at it purely as an enemy, but looking at it also as an ally. Like, these are the things that we sharpen our sword against. Like, yes, okay, this may be a coarse grindstone, but our spirit is the sword that needs the coarse diamond grindstone to grind against. And some of those things, fear, attachment, what I call the demon, which is another word for delusion, ignorance, and apathy. These are the 5 kind of forces of resistance that I was always encountering, and I'm still encountering in different ways, and then trying to understand what these forces of resistance are and trying to come up with the strategies on how to utilize them, the resistance as assistance, and also to overcome them when they're pressing down on you and they're holding you down and they're breathing down your throat. Like, how do you deal with fear, attachment, delusion, ignorance, and apathy?
The fear section is the section that when I took this course the first time, that changed my life. Before that moment, my relationship with fear was an unconscious. The moment I feel fear anywhere in my sphere of the world, I retreat from it. That was my default. And it's one of those things where it's a cliche when you hear someone say it, but it's fucking life-altering when you feel it. And after that section, I started doing small things that like I was afraid to do. Like, I didn't like to drive like in Austin. I got into a car accident when I was on way too much weed when I was young, and I was terrified of driving. And like, I would make dates where my goal for Saturday was to drive to Austin and to go somewhere and then to drive home. And then it started this fucking cascade effect that I I think that that's the moment that I started to do the things that led me to being here. And it was by changing my disposition towards fear. And we talked about it on a previous podcast, but one of the life-changing perspective ideas that I've come to terms with the past year is that resistance is actually my greatest ally in me becoming who I could be. And it's almost like if you dare to tell the universe that you want to become something worth remembering, the universe is like, okay, I'm going to give you the opponent in life, which is going to be all of the resistances that will make you capable of becoming that. And it's like, the bigger you dare ask, like, you're going to get the worthiest adversary that for the rest of your life is going to be your most intimate friend. It's going to be the thing that will constantly call you forward.
Or the universe will spit out these new bosses for the new boss battle. And like, after you, if you conquer one, it'll shift, and it'll shift, and it'll shift, and it'll shift, and it'll shift. And then until you reach a state where, which I do believe is possible, where you reach a state that, you know, resistance is so appreciated and you're so grateful for it that the reframing of it, that to call it resistance would be like an insult to it, you know? And so that you're in such radical acceptance of the binary nature of polarity itself that it's like, you're calling that resistance?
It's assistance.
Yeah, this is just everything. This is just life. This is just polarity itself. And I fucking love polarity. That's why I came here. And then the whole thing is so radically reframed that it no longer carries that same weight and that connotation that it once had. And I think that's the place that we're all going to. Now, some of these are tricky though. Like the last one I put in there is apathy. And that one's like, that one right there is, I think, that one is very complex, because that's when you don't care. Well, the reasons why you don't care is some amalgamation of fear and lack of perspective and ignorance and delusion, all of the things kind of wrapped up that just forces you to withdraw and say like, nah, I don't really care anyways. Well, which is really just letting yourself off the hook. Maybe your own self-judge is too high. Maybe you're afraid you're not good enough. Maybe you're afraid that, you know, you're going to get hurt. Maybe you're ignorant of, you know, who you really are. Or maybe the delusion has convinced you that everybody else is a shithead, and, you know, like whatever, could be a combination of all of these different things. And then, you know, I've felt moments of apathy too. And then and all of these have like the antidote to it. And the antidote to apathy is love. You know, like when you really love, then that's the last thing you're going to be. Like love is the antipathy of apathy.
Yeah. Apathy is one of those ones where like it's one of the stages of the hero's journey, and it's the refusal of the call. And apathy feels like every single human that exists, if they tap in, they know that apathy is a lie. Like the fact of your existence is proof of meaning, you know?
Yeah.
And to create a story of apathy, every single human I've ever met personally who was apathetic, all of them were people with potential who had a story about why they shouldn't have to dance with resistance, you know? And 100% of the people I have met, that has been basically the core idea, is that the meaning of life was so much, but that their story was that it shouldn't be like this. I think that, you know, I think it's Ted Decker who says, don't
shit on yourself.
Don't shit on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Or that it's like, there's a tendency I think that human beings have when we're afraid to acknowledge how good it might be, because we know we're going to have to give it back. And that goes back to attachment, right?
Wow.
Like if you really are really present for making love to your lover, your favorite lover, and you're just every fucking kiss, the feel of her lips on yours, that kind of intangible thing of your hearts connecting, and the smell of their body, and the movement, and the sighs that come out of the mouth, and the way that the body feels, and the pleasure that rushes through your skin, whether it's her hands rubbing through your hair or the feeling of intercourse itself or all of that, if you're really super present for that and realize like, oh shit, we may not be together. We may never have this experience again because we could break up. But even if we don't, we're going to get old and we're going to die and I'm going to have to give this up anyway. So you know what? I'm going to check out and not really enjoy this because I'm going to have to give it up at some point. And if it's this fucking good, how can I ever give it up? I'm going to be attached. And we can do that with eating a fucking peach. Like if being really present is terrifying because contained in the pleasure of the presence is the knowledge that we got to let it go.
I've never made that connection, which now it seems like duh. But this is like that because of how good it could be, because we all know that we're going to die. Like all of us know that it's almost like I'm not going to try because that endpoint when I meet that thing at the end of time, like it's, I guess the delusional fear is that it's going to be harder. Mm-hmm. And I heard a psychologist say the other day that your entire life is an ebb and flow between attachment and detachment. That beautiful things come by you and have a gravity and they pull you, but eventually they leave and you pull back and then you feel the void of the thing that was there. Like that's one of the things about DMT for me, that when I come back, I tend to cry a lot. And it's because the feeling, like the gravitational well in the experience, when I come back to my meat suit existence, I know that it won't ever be like that. Or at least while the ego is operating, while I'm like doing the work, even if I'm in the best love moment with, anyone, there's this sense of like sadness. And then I guess there's almost like a small fear of to go back to that place, to know that I'm going to come back. And then it's,
Yeah. I mean, I could see that for the psychedelic space. And I think for me, that fear is alleviated by the fact that I feel like that space is the space we do get permanent access to when we die. So like, that's not the thing.
I need that story.
That's not the thing I'm worried about, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, this is where I'm going when I die anyway. So I'll be back here. So I'm not worried about holding on to this feeling.
I see where you're
going. So like when I smoked 5-MeO DMT and I like merged with the somatic body of God, it wasn't like, oh, fuck, I need to hold on to this. Because it was perhaps the single best feeling I've ever felt. It was like every orgasm that the entire world had all at once, along with every scream, along with every cry, along with every smile, along with every yell. It was all the things. How could you get a better feeling than that? But when the shaman asked me if I wanted to go again, I was like, no, I'm good. Like, this is for later.
Yeah.
Like, but when I cry, and I cry all the time now because, and what I think it is like, for example, so I did those musical podcasts recently in LA and I was amazing musicians, Citizen Cope and Mike Posner and Ellie Dewey, like playing music in front of me and pouring their soul into the music. And I've heard all of these songs before, but like really hearing them, because I was still and because I was present and because perhaps the podcast drove me into that greater stillness and the moment and also the proximity and all of these things. Like I cried at every song. Mm-hmm. Finally, at the end, when Ellie was playing her guitar, I was like, I fucking can't take it anymore. I can't take feeling this much anymore. And I was half kidding, but what it was, the tears were a recognition of like, I've heard all these songs before, but not really let myself listen to them, not really let them flow through me. And so I start to cry. And this is any moment of love with a lover, any time. I cry sometimes when I'm eating food because I've eaten the same food and not appreciated it. And when I'm there and I'm present and I'm appreciating, I cry because I realize like, how many times did I eat this meal and not really be there to taste it? How many times did I make love? How many times did I look in Whitney's eyes but not really see her? How many times have I done this? And it'll make me weep to realize like, it's so good and it's here and it's available. And it's not even, it's not even so much the fear anymore of having to lose it. It's just what really I'm looking back on is the sadness of denying it, and knowing that I could have felt that strongly the whole time. I mean, could have, like I wasn't able to yet. And this is the pathway of learning. But, go to that moment where you die. You really think you're going to regret that you love shit so much that you missed it? No, you're not going to fucking regret that. You're going to regret that you didn't enjoy it, that it could have been that fucking good. It could have been that good. You could have felt it all the way to the extreme. You could have let it all in. Like, if we let it all in, like, fuck, we win. We win the whole way. Every moment of that is a win, so going for the win, that's like going for these moments. It's going for the achievement, which isn't even achievement, it's the acceptance of what could be called the kingdom of heaven, which is right here, right now, in the present moment, available to us always. It could be that good if we allow it to be. And that's just on the other side of fear and attachment.
It's like the cheat code to going for your win is to recognize that the moment, or is just to recognize the moment in love, which sounds like a cliche, but it's something that, like, when you experience, all of this is worth it. Every moment is worth it. So pick the right mission, train the skills, and dance with resistance.
That's it. Because you'll never have to ask like that existential question of like, why am I even here? What am I doing in this life or this body? You like live one of those moments, you're like, 35 years of suffering, worth it. Worth it.
It's so
worth it
true,
for this
man.
fucking kiss, worth it for this fucking moment. Like, yeah, I'll make that trade. Like, it's so rich and so good and so unique to being in this body and being in this human existence. Like, it just recalibrates everything. And then you don't ask why anymore, about not the big why of like, why am I here? It's like, oh, duh, of course. Like,
Absolutely.
because I get to feel this shit. And that's, hopefully this course helps to get people a little bit closer and more accessible to that. I know the understandings here in the writings that has helped me immensely. So, that's what we wanted to do. And I want to give a ton of credit to you for going back through and enriching this from the first time that we launched it with so many more practices. I mean, 37,000 words, now somewhere close to 45,000 because of so many more experiences and practices and things that we've layered through. But keeping the integrity of the structure and the original words, but adding in all of your expertise from psychology, and then still, once again, like cultivating that community element,
Right.
which is still like, I mean, how many of your friends now are friends from
All
the
of my
course?
friends in Austin, not all, probably 90% of my closest friends here that I don't work with are all from Go For Your Win.
That's fucking beautiful, man. I mean, and obviously we have the Fit for Service Fellowship, which has taken some people and I'm leading them through this year-long course, but this is way more accessible and like has actual like a body of content rather than, the spontaneous interaction, but it has both. It has the community that we're cultivating as well as this kind of curriculum.
Absolutely.
This escalation through the different channels. So I'm just stoked to be able to, offer this in this kind of reboot.
Same. It changed my life. And I feel like I see, because anyone who writes a book, the moment they write the book, they're kind of like, like I wrote the book. I see the soul in this idea and like what it did to my life and all my friends, and I want to do everything that I can to show this to as many people as possible so they can, the idea that some words and some practices and a community can take someone from apathy to love is worth all the hours, all the work, all the writing, all the trying, all the failing. Period.
Okay.
Hey.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. God's another epic conversation. I love you, man. I appreciate you so much. And you guys too. We will see you soon. Peace.